FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried. So this is all in the news at the moment that Sam Bankman-Fried has been arrested in the Bahamas, and it's big news. It's big news for the financial markets, and it's big news for US law and securities law. It's something that should have been done a long time ago, where cryptocurrencies have been in the public eye for many years now. And it's about time that there should be regulation around this digital asset. So let's talk about Sam first and see what charges have been leveled against him. Of course, he's being charged for wire fraud, securities fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. And this has come about after a number of interviews that he's done with mainstream news outlets, not just small interviewers, but mainstream news outlets, including the BBC, by the way. And he's been very open in his confessions about how FTX was just allowed to do whatever it wanted to do without any serious corporate governance. Now, corporate governance is absolutely key when you're running a company, and especially when you're handling public funds. Funds from customers, whether they be retail, sophisticated investors, or even indeed accredited investors. So before we get into the failings of FTX itself, let's talk about the three stakeholders who are the biggest losers here. You've got lenders, you've got investors, and then you've got the customers of FTX themselves. Now, to be perfectly honest, when you're looking from a perspective of investing and lenders should be doing the due diligence, and investors should be doing the due diligence before they give money to a company and hand over billions and billions of dollars, in this case, to put into a company. They need to ensure that that company is beyond failing, because of ultimately they're going to lose their money. And of course, if you're looking at from an Islamic perspective, investors put money into an investment and they are at complete risk of losing that money. And that risk is assumed from the Islamic perspective, from Sharia perspective, that if you are going to invest money, if you're going to give someone money, then you should be willing to assume the risk of losing 100% of that investment. However, customers need to be protected, and the customers are the biggest losers here, because of course, FTX was marketed as a entry-level cryptocurrency exchange and an entry-level place where customers, retail customers, can go and buy cryptocurrency and even trade cryptocurrencies. And how did these customers lose all of that money? Of course, they lost the money because of a lack of governance from the executive team of FTX themselves. Of course, we've got Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, let's just talk about this for a second. He doesn't come from a poor background or someone who doesn't understand anything about law and finance. His parents are both lawyers, and they're very, very clever people. And he is the prodigal son of theirs. So clearly, he should have assumed some controls, some financial controls, some controls over the governance of the company, which is handling millions and millions of dollars of customers' money. But what do we find? That even simple controls weren't in place. And of course, if you're a business owner, you know that having control over your finances and your cash flow is the number one concern that you have in your business. And especially if you're handling customer funds, then that needs to be looked after with the highest importance. Of course, that's why you've got financial governance in place to ensure that when you're handling customer funds, that customer funds are protected. That customer funds are protected from loss. That customer funds are protected from misuse. That customer funds are protected from anything that can go wrong. And that is what's happened. Now, like I said, investors and lenders can lose their money. However, customers should be protected. But what did the team do at FTX? They were buying personal assets. They were lavishly spending on million-dollar mansions and homes. And they were spending on big, massive events for the company. You can do that if you're flush with cash. Cash from profits, not cash from lending or cash from investing. But you can do that when you're flush with cash from profits. And FTX fundamentally failed at that point. They were getting money from lenders and investors to ultimately plug the hole that was draining from the funds of FTX. And you cannot prefer shareholders, and you cannot prefer company funds being wasted like that. The number one concern is the company is or the health of the company should be the number one concern of shareholders, of employees, of directors, of management, whether that's an executive team or a non-executive team. The company's health is the number one concern. And that's where Sam failed, and that's why FTX claimed bankruptcy in the way that it did. Now, the financial regulators cannot claim complete ignorance on this, because if they had the regulation in place for cryptocurrencies, for Bitcoin, and especially for public companies or private companies which are handling customer funds, then this would have been avoided, or at least it would have been minimized, if not avoided completely. Because of course, business is business and it can go wrong. Whatever governance companies do, they are doing it for the protection of the customers and the protection of investors. Even Sharia puts in rules in place to protect customers and to protect society. It's about minimizing harm. And that's where FTX failed, and that's where the US ultimately failed. In any case, that's my thoughts about Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX, and how it's the failure not only of the company and the governance, but also the failure of US law, the failure of financial law in regulating cryptocurrencies.